Well, hello everyone, it's Ben Hardy here, and in today's video we're talking about black swan events that could potentially happen in the near future and would obviously be devastating to the car market. Before we get in this video though, as always, if you can save time and money the next time you purchase a car, link to my car buying guide in the description down below. And then if you want to see more videos just like this, then I recommend you subscribe because I post content every single day. Let's get into it. The first event that could absolutely be catastrophic for the car market is the whole repossession crisis. Repos were a thing before the pandemic. However, once the pandemic hit, repossessions plummeted because car values went through the roof. And so a lot of people that would normally have their cars repossessed didn't have to have that happen anymore because they went from being underwater on their loan to being break even, or sometimes they were positive in their loans. And so it's like, if you can sell your car and make some money, why would you go and have it repossessed? But obviously that time is long gone. Interest rates have increased drastically since the pandemic. And on top of that, car prices have come down a massive amount on a wholesale front with used cars. And so this puts a lot of people under water, and car payments are at the highest that they have ever been historically. And so this is like the perfect storm for people to have their cars repossessed, because you can have a lot of people that took out a loan right during the pandemic or recently and realize now that they can no longer afford that loan because we're going into an economy where there's a lot of layoffs happening in a bunch of different sectors, especially tech sectors, right? And so again, it just all adds up to where these people will owe more money in their car than what it's worth because the value declines. They can't afford the payment because they just got laid off, or they just were dumb and bought a car that they could not afford. And so they really just have one of two choices: either continue to make the payment that they can't afford or have their car repossessed. And so we're going to continue to see more repossessions. And this is what the data shows. It just shows that repossessions continue to increase on a month-to-month basis. Now, it's relatively linear, There are certain months that's kind of more exponential than others, but it's kind of trickling in at a steady enough rate that lending institutions and dealers are kind of able to basically figure things out. However, if you just have like a huge surge of people have their cars repossessed, then this will put enough pressure on lending institutions to make it so that they just don't want to loan out anymore. And they're already getting stricter and stricter right now. And then obviously, dealerships that are like buy here, pay here stores and all that kind of stuff, that'll also hurt them as well. And so it'll just put a lot of bad pressure, is what I'll call it, on the car industry, because you'll have all of these repoed cars flood the markets, which will obviously put tons of downward pressure on used cars, which means that the people that might want to buy these repossessed cars at a cheap dollar amount, well, if they happen to own a car they want to sell themselves, well, that car is going to be worth significantly less because of the overall downward pressure. And so it's not a good thing overall. And so this could be, and I think that this is the reason why I'm mentioning this first in the video, this could be the most likely black swan event that could just absolutely tank the car market, like just basically take it straight off of a cliff. And so I think that following what's happening with car repos is very important over the short term and the medium term as well. Now, the next event that could wreak havoc on the car market is if buying demand for used cars just falls off of a cliff. Right now, it's just been a steady decline, which, just like the whole repossession situation, gives lending institutions and also gives dealers some time to kind of navigate the whole situation. Because again, it's kind of like this like slow moving flood where they're like, oh, the waters are rising. Okay, let's move over here. Oh, they're still rising. Let's move over here. That's kind of what it's been like over the last year for especially dealerships with the used car market. And so if things continue to trickle like they are, then dealers will most likely be able to navigate the situation. Yes, you'll see some dealers go out of business, which will put more downward pressure on the used car market because you'll see more liquidations. However, if we see this basically continue throughout the entirety of this year and into next year, that could put enough pressure on small car lots and some of the bigger used car retailers like CarMax and Carvana, to the point where you're going to see so many liquidations that all of a sudden car values are just going to drop off of a cliff, because it's like you're going to see just tons of cars flood the market at insanely cheap prices because you're going to see tons of liquidations. And so this is an event that I feel like is the most likely to happen, because even if you don't see like with this event, obviously if you just see like a huge decline in buying demand, then yeah, that'll probably cause something to happen. But even if this just continues over an extended enough period of time, then eventually there is going to be a cliff, right? Values can only fall so far before certain parties just can't survive the storm anymore. So I'd pay very close attention to wholesale values with used cars as time goes on, just to see how big the declines are on a regular basis and then how long the declines last for. The next event is where new car automakers price themselves so far out of line within the market that they pretty much not only crash what's happening within the used car market, but then also within the new car market to then allow things to somewhat stabilize. I know that was a weird statement, but let me explain. So new car automakers seem to still be stuck in the mentality that there are production issues and they need to just focus on producing cars because there's all this pent-up demand, and they just need to meet that demand, and they'll be able to basically accomplish what they want to accomplish, which is being more profitable because they can charge whatever they want for their cars because, again, there's so much demand and there's not enough supply. However, new car automakers are obviously not on the ground. And so what a lot of them aren't seeing is that there are more and more cars stacking up in dealer inventories. And obviously new car automakers can look at what's happening with dealer inventories, but I just don't think that it's exactly registering with the consistent price increases we're seeing from new car automakers, and with the fact that there aren't really incentives from most new car automakers as well. Again, it doesn't seem like this whole situation's really like breaking through to them. And so if new car automakers continue to produce more and more cars, like focus on that, and then continue to increase their prices, they're literally going to create a situation where there's going to be tons of supply and there's going to be no demand because so many people already are priced out of the market, and it looks like more and more of these cars are going to be priced even higher to price even more people out of the market. And so you can imagine it's going to reach a point where it's going to be like, okay, there's going to have to be some new car liquidations, or else, people just simply aren't going to buy. And so this is similar to what I just talked about in the used car market, where it's going to be this like slow trickle effect over the next 6 to 12 to 18 to 24 months. But if new car automakers don't adjust quick enough, then it can definitely get out of hand. And then you're going to be in a situation where, like I said, dealers are going to have tons of inventory that they simply cannot sell. And so they're not going to be able to buy any more new cars from the new car automakers. And it's just going to be an absolute disaster. But obviously, for those of you that are buyers, could potentially present an interesting buying opportunity once the prices come down. And so pulling everything together, there are several events that could potentially happen in the near future that would put a ton of downward pressure on both the new car market and the used car market. And well, if all these events happen in a relatively short time frame, which that just seems to be our luck in today's world, then yeah, that would just be absolute chaos. I mean, you would see a car market that we just have never seen before. However, with that being said, the likelihood of all of those events happening at once, I think is pretty unlikely. And in terms of what I think is going to happen based on the research that I've done and what I see in here being on the ground every single day, is that with used cars, we are going to see a slow, steady decline happen at least over the course of this year. And I think that there's a pretty good chance that it'll continue into next year. But I think that the declines are slowly going to decrease. And what I mean by this is there will still be a decline in car values, but the percentage amounts that it's declining by each week is going to slowly decrease as time goes on, to where eventually the car market will be more normalized with the depreciation that we are experiencing. And so I don't see the used car market ever hitting a true crash, but I do see that, like Carvana, for example, going out of business is going to create an event, a short-term event, to where there's going to be a lot of pain, and then it's going to figure itself out, and then the car market's going to kind of move on from that. And then when it comes to the repossessions, again, it's pretty much going to be the same boring story, right? Slow, steady increases as time goes on, and then it's going to get to a point where, probably what's going to happen is the used car market's going to stop declining, and so then the repossession rate is going to, at the same time, stop increasing, and then the whole situation will figure itself out, and the repossession rate will probably decline from that peak. But obviously, this will still put downward pressure on the car market. It's just how much pressure? We don't know at this point. And then when it comes to new cars, this is the one that obviously, a group of people have the most control over, automakers, but it's just whether or not they're actually going to be paying enough attention to the market and actually listening to properly navigate this situation. Because at least with what I'm seeing right now is it looks like there's a lot of overproduction with vehicles that people don't want to buy. And then there's underproduction with vehicles that people do want to buy. And so it's creating this weird market where there are vehicles that are just sitting and not selling, and they're just increasing in, the amount of volume that they're at in dealerships. And then there are vehicles that are still not available, and the pricing with those vehicles is continuing to increase, whether it's manufacturers increasing the pricing or whether it's dealerships adding markups onto the vehicles. And so there's got to be some sort of fix for this situation, but I worry that the fix for the situation in the manufacturer's perspective is just to produce as many cars as possible, which ultimately would be good for, consumers, because that would have to bring prices down because supply and demand. But at the same time, I just don't know if that's what you'd want to introduce in the market we're experiencing, where you're seeing such big declines. But anyways, that's going to sum things up. Let me know if there is an event outside of the events that I mentioned that you think is going to wreak havoc on the car market and, be a black swan type event. Anyways, that's all. I'll see you.